chilling, cold murder that'll make you want to nail your windows shut. Part 1, warning for graphic violence, sexual assault, and murder. Oklahoma, May 13, 1997, 8-year-old Kirsten Hatfield's mom, Shannon, puts her to bed at 11:30 with her sister Faith in the same room. Shannon woke up hearing some strange noises at 3 o'clock in the morning, so she went to check on the girl's room. The door was closed, which she thought was weird, so she just opened the door, everything seemed normal, and went back to bed. By 6:30 in the morning, Shannon noticed that her daughter Kirsten was gone. Shannon and the family looked everywhere, called family, called friends, and then the police. Police found Kirsten's window was slightly cracked open. There was blood on the windowsill, and in the backyard a broken fence piece and Kirsten's underwear from that night with blood on them. There was a huge search, and the FBI got involved and questioned everyone, neighbors, friends, family, and for many years the case was cold. The family was suspected of foul play. But in 2014, the case was reopened with new DNA evidence. Chilling cold murder that'll make you want to nail your windows shut. Part 2, warning for graphic violence, sexual assault, and murder. For many years, the case went cold and the family was suspected of foul play, but in 2014, the case was reopened using new DNA evidence technology. They were able to identify a sample willingly given by a neighbor who lived only 2 doors down when Kirsten went missing, Anthony Palma. And Anthony's DNA matched the blood on the windowsill and Kirsten's underwear in the backyard. October 17, 2017, Anthony was given a life sentence without the chance of parole, and he waived his rights for an appeal. During sentencing, the sister and the mother of Kirsten said they forgive him, but they would just like her body back. Shannon felt any day he would confess and give up her body location. But in January 2019, after serving only 13 months, Anthony's cellmate Raymond, serving a life sentence for killing 3 people, strangled and beat Anthony to death for being a pedophile. An electric cord was found in Raymond's cell, and believed to be what ended Anthony's life. You're back on True Crime TikTok. The man known as the Miami, Florida face eater, Rudy Eugene, warning for graphic violence. On May 26, 2012, this 911 call was received.
He's beating another man. It's a naked man beating another man. I'm beating him. Yeah, on the MacArthur Causeway, like towards the Miami Town, it's at the end of the causeway, but he's going to kill that man, I promise you.
Rudy Eugene drove to the beach early morning, parked his vehicle, and began walking a 3-mile span on the highway. Along the way, Eugene strips off all of his clothes, drops a driver's license, and a Bible. Eugene comes across a homeless man named Ronald and tells Ronald that he couldn't score at the beach. He then accuses Ronald of stealing his Bible. Eugene attacks Ronald, pulling off his pants and biting his face and plucking his eyes from his head. When police arrived, Eugene growled at officers, so he was shot. Eugene continued to rip off Ronald's face with his teeth, so they shot 3 more times. And Eugene passed, but Ronald, although permanently disfigured and blind, survived. It's unknown why Eugene snapped. Toxicology revealed no drugs other than marijuana in his system. You're back on True Crime TikTok. What started as a home invasion ended with cold-blooded murder, warning for graphic violence and murder. Thanksgiving of 2012, Byron David Smith in Little Falls, Minnesota had a few break-ins happen recently. He got so paranoid he set up surveillance cameras and a private recorder. Byron decided to take things into his own hands. He moved his vehicle so it looked like no one was home and set up an area in the basement for him to hide. He had 2 guns, snacks, and a book, and he also placed a tarp at the end of the stairs. Byron set up a recorder to record everything. He sat and waited for the burglars, and sure enough, he hears the glass of his windows break. After Byron shoots 17-year-old Nick Brady, he realizes there's someone else in the house. Home invasion that ended with cold-blooded murder. Part 2, warning for graphic violence and murder. Byron realizes there's someone else in the house. Nick's 18-year-old cousin, Haley Kiefer. Haley whispers down the basement stairs.
Sorry about that. Bitch.
Byron shot Haley a total of 6 times. Eventually, Byron notified the police after ranting for 7 minutes in this 30-minute long recording. This recording was used to convict Byron for the murder of Haley and Nick. Self-defense is over once the person is subdued. Byron will spend the rest of his life in prison without the chance of parole. More facts in the comments for you. Back on True Crime TikTok. It's not every day your best friends try to kill you. Warning for graphic violence. Peyton and Morgan became friends in the 4th grade. By the 5th grade, Morgan had discovered the urban legend known as Slenderman. Morgan began telling these stories to Peyton, making her uncomfortable and creeped out, but she still supported her friend. When the 6th grade came around, Morgan met Anissa, and the two became obsessed with Slenderman together. Morgan and Anissa wanted to live in Slenderman's mansion, and they believed the only way they could get there was to take a life. Morgan and Anissa lured Peyton into the woods to play hide-and-seek. Anissa asked Peyton to lay on the ground to hide, and Morgan came out and stabbed her 19 times while Anissa cheered her on. Peyton thankfully survived the attack and was able to crawl to the road where a bystander called 911. Morgan and Anissa were both put on trial and found not guilty by mental disease or defect. Morgan was found to be schizophrenic like her father. She received 40 years in a mental institution and Anissa 25 years. Anissa petitioned in November 2020 for an early release. You're back on True Crime TikTok. A child killer who's going to trial March 22nd, 2021 in Arkansas. Warning for graphic violence and murder. April 1st, 2019, 3-year-old McKinley was rushed to the emergency room by her father, Everett. McKinley was unresponsive, her head was shaved, and she had severe bruising. McKinley passed, and an autopsy was done. She had damage to her kidneys, pancreas, and lungs from blunt force trauma. Chunks of her hair had been ripped from her head before she was shaved. Her body was in such distress that her liver was literally shutting down. The stepmother, McKenna Belcher, and the father, Everett, were arrested. Everett testified he saw McKenna abusing the children and did nothing. He's being charged as an accessory to murder. McKenna is being charged with capital murder, and the state is seeking the death penalty. McKenna also abused McKinley's brother and a newborn child who needed immediate medical treatment. So remember this date, March 22nd, 2021. On True Crime TikTok, the Dr. Phil Turnaround Ranch Murder, Part 1, Warning for Graphic Violence and Murder. In Arizona, 17-year-old Clay Brewer was a drug-addicted teen sent to one of Dr. Phil's turnaround ranches in Utah to help him overcome his addiction. 5 days after being in the turnaround ranch, Clay says he woke up feeling heartless. Clay attacks counselor Jimmy Woodley and beats him to death with a piece of rebar and injures another counselor. Clay then stole a car and took off. When the police found him, Clay pretended to have a weapon in hopes that they would shoot him and kill him. Clay was arrested and is facing 5 to life in prison. The wife of Jimmy is suing the Turnaround Ranch because their policy says they don't admit people who demonstrate aggressive or actively suicidal behavior. But this isn't the first time something bad has happened at these turnaround ranches that Dr. Phil is constantly sending troubled teens to. A Colorado woman who also appeared on the Dr. Phil show is suing the Utah Turnaround Ranch for being sexually assaulted, Part 2. Back on True Crime TikTok, exposing Dr. Phil's Turnaround Ranches, Part 2, Warning for Sexual Assault. Clay Brewer murdering a counselor isn't the first time something bad has happened at the Turnaround Ranches Dr. Phil is constantly sending troubled teens to. A 17-year-old named Hannah appeared on the Dr. Phil show and was sent to the Utah Turnaround Ranch. At the ranch, Hannah was sexually assaulted by a staff member and told a female staff member hoping she'd understand and help her. Instead, Hannah was met with physical and mental abuse at the hands of the Turnaround Ranch, being forced to spend extra time picking up horse manure and work outside in below freezing temperatures. Sleep on a wooden plank with no pillow and sit at a desk facing a wall for hours. The ranch has denied these allegations despite many of the teens who attended these turnaround ranches speaking out about the harsh conditions they endured while being there. Dr. Phil has a history of exploiting people for financial benefit, but sending teens to unsafe environments to give them more trauma will not cure these teens, and it's all for his views. It's time we cancel Dr. Phil. Killer parents, a failing state, and cops who can't do their job right. This is a true crime story that will make your skin crawl. Warning for graphic violence and murder. Omaree, Part 1. Cynthia was a known crackhead. Because of her addiction, she gave birth to a baby boy prematurely while in prison. His name was Omaree. Cynthia's sister, Sylvia, took Omaree and took care of him until he was 3 years old. One day in the middle of the night, Cynthia shows up with the police and takes custody of Omaree based on a technicality that the state made. Omaree was very confused and upset, and of course so was Sylvia. She's raised Omaree since he was a baby, and she was trying to adopt him, but Cynthia just couldn't let that happen. December 2012, 8-year-old Omaree's teacher called the police and reported Omaree had a large bruise on his face and another that went from his hip to his thigh. Omaree told his teacher his mother had done this to him. When the police arrived, the teacher was shocked to see they conducted an interview with his mother, who was his alleged abuser, sitting inside the room the entire time. Killer parents, a failing state protective system, and cops who can't do their job right. Omaree, Part 2. Warning for graphic violence and murder. Omaree's teacher was shocked to see when the police arrived to conduct an interview, his mother, who was the alleged abuser, was sitting in the room the entire time the interview was conducted. Omaree changed his story and told the officers he fell while playing with his brother, so the police left and did nothing. 6 months later, June 2013, a 911 call was received. What you'll be hearing is Cynthia and her husband Steve yelling at Omaree for spilling food. Steve is Omaree's stepfather.
You make everybody sick around you, Omaree. Everybody. You make me and your mom sick, man. What's up, man? Omaree, man. It's like spicy of all cops, but everything, Omaree. I really wish we could get rid of you, Omaree. I really do, man. Or I can get made of myself. Yo, man, you didn't do it.
Killer Parents, a failing state protective system, and cops who can't do their job right, Omaree Part 3, warning for graphic violence and murder. The full 911 call is 22 minutes long, and it's very clear that some child is being abused in the call. The police respond to the house because the 911 dispatcher stressed that it's urgent. However, the police did not listen to the 911 call, even though they had access to listen to it. Instead, they took Sylvia and Steve's word that one of the younger children called 911 on accident. In the body cam footage, you can see Omaree and how scared he looks as his stepfather and his mother stand over and explain to police how it was all just a big accident. Officers claim that they questioned the couple for 2 hours, but the body cam footage showed that they were only there for 15 minutes. There were 9 referrals regarding Omaree being abused to the State of Children and Youth Protective Services. However, the state failed and the police failed because Omaree, Killer Parents, a failing state protective system, and cops who can't do their job right, Omaree Part 4, warning for graphic violence and murder. 6 months later, after Omaree had called 911 on his parents, another 911 call was received, but this time it was Omaree's mother.
Pushed him off the horse, and it looked kind of like he was having a seizure or something, so I was trying to do CPR and push on his chest and try to get him.
Omaree was pronounced dead. Autopsy results showed Omaree had lost 25% of his blood volume due to internal bleeding. He had cigarette burns on his chest, injuries to his head, chest, abdomen, back, his groin, both forearms, left knee, right shin, and his tongue. Omaree died from blunt force trauma. Cynthia and stepfather Steve both went to court. Cynthia received 40 years and Steve received 30, but then got a reduced sentence and will be released soon. Someday they'll be free. Remember their faces because they killed Omaree and he was only 9 years old. He couldn't defend himself and he was failed by everyone around. Back on True Crime TikTok. What these two brothers did will shock you. Warning for graphic violence and sexual assault. In 1988, Portland, Oregon, a woman named Michelle was addicted to drugs and selling her body to pay for her habit. One day, a man approached her for a $30 car date. She was quickly taken captive with a bag placed over her head, forced into the bed of a truck where another man was waiting, and tied her down. She was taken to an unknown location and forced to stay in a closet restrained to the floor. She was made to use the bathroom and a litter box, and she would be taken to another room with bars on the windows, and the two men would tie her down, sexually assault, sodomize, and take Polaroid pictures, and if she moved too much, they would taser her. After 7 days, she was thrown out of a truck and went straight to the police where she told them everything, including her past history of drug abuse and prostitution. The police didn't take the woman seriously or investigate. In 1990, another woman named Andrea Hood was working as a prostitute and was abducted just like Michelle. Like Michelle, Andrea thought she was going to die at the hands of these men, Part 2. We're back on True Crime TikTok. What these two brothers did will shock you. Part 2, warning for graphic violence and sexual assault. In 1990, another woman named Andrea Hood was working as a prostitute and was abducted just like Michelle. Andrea was tied to a bed, sexually assaulted, and forced to pretend to be a family with these two sick men. The men wanted Andrea to read a book about being a good girl. She agreed to read the book so that the men would take a handcuff off of her. Andrea was able to free her other hand and remove her leg restraints, and she grabbed a gun and tried to smash a window she saw earlier that didn't have bars. The glass didn't break, and Andrea heard the men coming, saying they couldn't let her escape. She threw herself through the glass. Andrea, naked and bleeding, got help, and the police identified the house by the broken window. And these two men, they were brothers. What police found inside the home left no doubts in their mind they had the right pair. Chains, sex toys, torture instruments, a soundproof closet, and Polaroids of unidentified tortured women. But who and where are these women? Back on True Crime TikTok. What these two brothers did will shock you. Warning for graphic violence and sexual assault, Part 3. The brothers who kidnapped and sexually assaulted Michelle and Andrea, Vance Roberts, and Paul Jackson were offered bail. Their mother paid their bail and the brothers both vanished. Police had a lot of questions, like who and where were the women that were in those Polaroid pictures. The pictures were so disturbing and graphic, they obviously could not release them to the public, so they made sketches in hopes that they might get some answers about who these women are and if they're even alive. 15 years after the brothers had disappeared, Vance turns himself in thinking the statute of limitations doesn't apply to him anymore. He was convicted to life in prison, but he refused to say what happened to the other women or his brother's location. Using their father's Facebook, they were able to track down Paul in Mexico, who was living under a fake name and working at Motorola, married with a family of his own. He got 18 years and also has refused to say what happened to the other women. Back on True Crime TikTok, a county sheriff jail guard's 911 call will surprise you. Part 1, warning for graphic violence and murder. August 11th, 2011, this 911 call was received.
Yeah, I killed her.
You killed her?
Yeah.
Who did you kill?
I sent somebody. 14900 Cowley.
Who did you kill, Debbie?
My wife. My ex-wife.
What's her name?
Susan Cowley.
Who else is there with you, Debbie?
Just me and my dog.
William Denby and his wife, Holly Denby, had been sleeping in separate rooms for a year, and they were planning on talking about their standings and making up, according to William. An argument started, and William hit Holly, and she bled. He helped her clean up the blood, and then he went to the other room and got a knife. He took the knife and began another conversation with Holly, and she was saying everything he wanted. Back on True Crime TikTok, a county sheriff jail guard's 911 call Part 2, warning for graphic violence and murder. William went to the other room and grabbed a knife and continued his conversation with Holly. She was saying everything he wanted to hear now, and this enraged him, so he attacked her again. He ripped off her shirt, and she locked herself in the bathroom. William broke down the door and stabbed her, and Holly crawled out of a window and fell in the backyard, now seriously injured. William then went downstairs to the backyard and stabbed her. Holly Denby worked as a special needs paraprofessional for children. Holly told friends and family that William was abusive and she was scared of him. William showed no remorse and instead tried to paint himself as a victim and blame everything on Holly, and William's mother tried to defend that narrative. He received 15 years plus an additional 5 to life in prison. He tried to file an appeal. It was denied. If you or someone you know is or is suspected of being in an abusive relationship, call the National Domestic Abuse Hotline on screen. We're back on True Crime TikTok. This woman unalived a man and had this to say after committing the heinous crime, warning for graphic violence and murder. Angela Simpson met 46-year-old Terry Neely outside of an assisted living facility he lived at. He was disabled and used a motorized wheelchair to get around. Angela and Terry began a friendship, but Terry confided that during a prison stay, he snitched on another inmate, and this seriously set Angela off. On August 5, 2009, Angela lured Terry away to an abandoned apartment and killed him and tortured him for 3 days. After the crime, she had this to say.
You're very upfront.
Very much.
About talking about this killing.
Right.
You murdered this man.
Yes.
You tortured him.
Of course.
There is no ambiguity, and there is nothing you want to... In court today, you said remorseful.
Of course.
Part 2. We're back on True Crime TikTok. This woman unalived a man and had this to say after committing the heinous crime. Part 2, warning for graphic violence and murder.
Very much.
About talking about this killing.
Right.
You murdered this man.
Yes.
You tortured him.
Of course.
There is no ambiguity, and there is nothing you want to... In court today, you said you're not here to pretend to be remorseful.
Of course not. Why would I do that?
Are you remorseful?
Not at all.
Why?
Why would I be?
Well, why did this man deserve to die? You claimed he was a snitch.
Well,
what proof do you have of that?
He told me he was a snitch. I took him to my house, walked him down the street. I don't know why the media acts like the motherfucker couldn't walk. He walked very well. Walked him upstairs, kicked his ass, and killed him.
And again, your belief is that he was a snitch because he told you.
Back on True Crime TikTok, a millionaire serial killer in 2 minutes or less, Part 1, warning for graphic violence and murder. May 6, 2013, in Canada, a man named Tim and his wife were waiting for 2 men to come test drive his truck that was up for sale. And although they were 2 hours later than what was planned, when they arrived on foot, Tim said he'd be right back to his wife. A few hours go by and his wife still hasn't heard anything from Tim, so she calls the police and reports him missing. Within a few days, they find Tim's cell phone out in the woods. Police use Tim's phone to track the men who lured him out for a test drive, and it's traced to a burner phone registered in a fake name. It was a dead end. Police were able to discover the two men who Tim left with because they test drove other trucks not too far, and they were able to identify the tattoos from anonymous tips. And this person was Dylan Millard. Dylan was a millionaire heir to an aviation firm that his father had founded. What was he doing buying a truck, and where was Tim? The story only gets worse from here. Back on True Crime TikTok, a millionaire serial killer in 2 minutes or less, part 2, warning for graphic violence and murder. Police discovered the two men who Tim left with because they test drove other trucks not too far from where they test drove Tim's. They were able to identify a millionaire named Dylan Millard. Police find and arrest Dylan and search his properties and his mother's. Dylan was a millionaire heir to an aviation firm that his father had founded. On Dylan's mother's property, they found Tim's truck in a trailer. They also found something very strange after one of the workers made a comment about Dylan doing weird things with his friends out in the middle of the swamp. The worker said that it was a smoker, but when the police get there, it's actually a 6-foot by 10-foot cremation device that Dylan had labeled the Eliminator. The police sweep out this cremation device and find small bits of bone and teeth. Because of the heat of the cremation device, there was no DNA, so the police had to dig further, and what they found. We're back on True Crime TikTok. The Millionaire Serial Killer, Part 3, warning for graphic violence and murder. The cremation device was swept out, and they found small fragments of human bone and teeth, but no DNA present because of the heat. The police investigate further and start taking more tips in, and they were tipped about a woman named Laura Babcock. Laura was in some kind of an open relationship with Dylan and his at-the-time girlfriend, but after a fight broke up between the two girls over text, Dylan told his girlfriend he'd handle it, and on July 3rd, 2012, Laura vanished. She was gone without a trace. And on this night Laura vanished, she met up with Dylan. And Dylan took a picture on his phone in one of his barns of a rolled-up blue tarp that was taped up and set an alarm in his phone for 4 days later for a barn smell check. This still wasn't the worst of it. Millionaire heir Dylan, after he killed Laura, had actually killed his own